You're listening to the Health Powered Productivity Podcast by RaderCo. I'm Marcey Rader, founder and chief productivity lead. This podcast aims to give you and your team bite-sized, time-saving, focus-boosting, health-improving tips you can implement right away. Hello, everyone. This is a special episode. I normally am just doing them by myself, but I have brought in my TEDx speaker coach, a RaderCo team specialist, and one of my very, very dear friends, Helen, as our part 2 for how to prepare for TEDx, but also really any presentation that you are doing that's important. So let me give you a little background about Helen. She is a voice and communication strategist and owner of Speak Up Communications, understands the value of TEDx talks from the perspectives of a business owner, TEDx speaker, and speaker coach. She was the TEDx Raleigh speaker coach from 2017 to 2021 and has coached individuals speaking at other TEDx events, including mine at TEDx NC State. In September 2022, Helen gave her own TEDx talk called Do Talk to Strangers. She's the author of the Amazon bestseller, Voice Unleashed, Speaking Up with Faith and Courage. I will link to Helen's TEDx talk and her book, which is, I don't know how many I've gifted, 10 to 15 probably, of her books. It's an excellent book. I will link to both of those in the show notes. Her work empowers individuals to speak up with alignment, confidence, and empathy, building stronger relationships that lead to greater fulfillment, efficiency, and results for all. So, Helen, tell us about your experience helping people with their TEDx.
Well, first of all, Marcy, thank you for having me here. This is fun to get to be on your podcast with you. I appreciate the opportunity. So yes, you said, and it's true, I was the TEDx speaker coach for TEDx Raleigh over a span of 4 years and got to work with individuals who spoke on that stage. And I have worked with a number of individual speakers who have spoken on different stages, such as yourself. And I've also worked with some people who want to give a TEDx talk, already have the topic in mind, but just haven't found the stage yet. So there have been some other people that I have worked with in that way. And along the way, I've sort of designed my own coaching package, if you will, kind of a plan for people who want to give a TEDx talk that's a little bit different from my typical voice and communication coaching. As well as I have given like a short hour-long lunch and learn webinar type thing of just what it takes to do a TEDx talk, answering some general questions. So that's what I have so far as my experience.
Good. And I failed to mention in the beginning, so that the first part of this 2-part podcast episode series on the TEDx, I went into great detail about my preparation and my rehearsal and so on. So this podcast is more focused on Helen as the speaker coach and what she could do with clients and the things that she sees with people, in their TEDx rehearsal and talk experience. But I want to also mention that Helen is our vocal communications specialist for RaderCo. And I would love for you to tell people how you work with people that aren't doing TEDx talks.
Yeah, everybody needs to speak and get their point across and communicate in a variety of situations. So one of the things that I do with RaderCo clients that's been a pretty consistent theme is helping people find their voice. They might be in a new role in the organization and they're managing different people, reporting to different people, and that's something that can help them increase their confidence in that new role. And then there's some times where people have difficult conversations and communications they have to have with people and navigate around some of that workplace dynamic challenge that is in every workplace. And I can help people do that too. That's some of what I've done.
And one thing that you've helped several people with in this past year are people that, because we work with a lot of scientists and medical doctors and people that are in more technical fields, you've helped them convey their technical content to non-technical audiences. And that is a special type of speaking that not everybody understands or gets.
Yeah. Yes. And it's important information they have to convey.
Yes. Yep. All right. So tell us how you can help people no matter what their presentation is. TEDx or conveying technical information.
Okay. Yeah. I think people don't think a lot about preparation or don't think enough about preparation. So what we'll talk about today in terms of getting prepared, plus what all you did talk about in your first part 1 of this series, preparation is really important. And I think people take that for granted that they don't need it or need as much of it. So that's something that can help anyone at any time. And another thing that I have seen is that people forget that when we are communicating or presenting information or giving a talk, it's really about giving that information to a specific audience. And that the audience needs a little bit more of our attention as we prepare and as we speak than we often tend to give them. And then the last thing is some people sometimes have great ideas, but they're all over the place. And so what we do in a TEDx talk is bring it down to one idea worth spreading. And that type of exercise of understanding what is your main point, what is your through line, can help anybody in any presentation.
You know, I was just talking to somebody yesterday and saying how one of the things that you helped me with is that if we're telling any story about ourselves or our lives, it's all important. We think every aspect of it is important. And it takes somebody from the outside to say, they're not going to care about that, or that's not important. And it feels like, oh, but yes, it is. But really, that's where you need to give it up and let somebody like you tell us, like, you know, that's not going to work. Because one thing with my script, because TEDx is for the most part a script, which is unlike typical talks that I give, is that you and I worked on it to where there was no frivolous line or word or anything. I mean, we even went down to like, take out this word, take out this line. And so, you know, having somebody like Helen be able to say, like, the audience is going to care about this, not this, is really helpful. Yes.
Yes. Yes.
What are the top 3 mistakes you see people making when they're preparing for a TEDx or any important talk?
Well, I've already actually mentioned a couple of them. The biggest one, the biggest mistake I see people making is underestimating how much time is needed to prepare to really deliver a talk that's going to make a difference for a lot of people. That takes in the form of someone just procrastinates and doesn't start soon enough, or once they start, they just don't put enough time in. And then they don't take the time to get any feedback from anyone, whether it's a professional coach or just another person that could listen in and give them some thoughts. So that's the biggest thing, that all of that lumped into underestimating how much prep is needed. Secondly is, we talked about it already, not being able to convey their idea worth spreading, which is what TED and TEDx is all about, in a very succinct, memorable way. And the last thing, which is very much how I coach, is helping people understand that when they're speaking, they're serving the audience. It's not about them, and it's not about having a perfect performance and getting everything right. It's about making an impact. So people forget that and focus on getting all of the details and all of the delivery and all of the pronunciation and all of the jokes and all of the timing and all of the slides and all of that right, but missing the point of this actually being about the people who are hearing it and not about them.
Yeah, that's good. Where do you feel people spend too little or too much time in the preparation?
Well, you know, I've seen it happen where people don't have a backup plan if something goes wrong. I mean, the technology could go wrong. You could lose your place, which I did. I'll talk about in a minute. the lights could go off, so many things could go off. And if you haven't taken the time to think, well, how will you handle that if something like that happens, so that I can stay in control and finish my talk? That can really get you into trouble. So too little time anticipating those needs.
Mm-hmm. We had a slide that I ended up removing because as I was rehearsing, I would forget these two lines, like every few times I went through it. And if I missed that, if there, I've heard so many speakers that do TEDx that will say like, I forgot a section or I missed this line or something. And because my slides were so timed and, we decided that I should just take that out.
Yeah.
Slide wasn't super important. And in case I did forget that section, it wasn't going to throw me off.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a great example.
Mm-hmm. And where too much.
Yeah, too much. I think I'm a musician as well. I'm a singer. You're married to a musician. I know.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm learning a new piece of music, I will like do the beginning and we'll start it over and I'll keep starting it over and I'll mess up in the middle of the piece, but I'll still go back to the beginning and I'll try to get through the whole piece. And I neglect to actually go back to that part where I messed up. So I think in their talks, they spend too much time on what they're going to start to say, and then they don't have enough time on the individual components and making sure they are prepared to end strong as well.
Mm-hmm. This made me think, I don't think I put this in the first episode, but this made me think of you. You said to me a few times, like, if something comes up, just stop, pause, do what you need to do. And when I walked on the stage, when I looked at the person running the slides, they had left to go to the bathroom and there was no one there and they didn't tell anyone. And so when I looked, there was no one at the table and I just waited. And afterwards, like people say like, what was happening? What were you doing up there? And they didn't know that something, they left the room, but they didn't feel like something was wrong. A couple of people actually said like, you really commanded the stage. You were like, something's going on and we're waiting until we are, until it's whatever it is resolved. But everybody was like, what was happening? They were curious.
Well, that's a great example because in TEDx there's a time limit. There's a max. The talks are not supposed to go more than 18 minutes. Mm-hmm. And if you talk over that, that's a problem. Some of your talk has to be cut out in order for the final video to make it 18 minutes or less. But if you're standing there and you're not saying anything, either while you're waiting on the person to come back to the slide turning table, the tech table, or like in my case, I lost my place. I was like, I actually enjoyed the moment. I'm like, oh my goodness, here I am on stage and here's everybody looking at me and I'm really doing this that I've wanted to do for a long time. And I had to pause to get myself back into it. But the good news is if you have a pause, it can be edited out of the video and the pause will not count against your total time for that 18-minute deadline.
Yes. Because let's be real. While, of course, we want the audience there that day to feel the engagement and the message and things. In the end, that video is what is so important because it's the video that could reach hundreds or thousands or 10,000s or millions. Mm-hmm. And it's so important. So Helen, what are your day of tips?
Well, the first thing I would say is don't plan on anything else that day. Get someone else to drive you. Let that be your thing that day. And then I'm a big fan of warming up because you will be using your entire body to speak. The entire body will be visible as you're on stage. You want to warm up your body, do some stretches, movements, and dancing maybe. You also want to warm up your face so that your facial expressions are going to be as beautiful and as big as they are naturally to you. But if you don't have enough facial expressions in your talk, people might not feel the emotion that you're trying to convey as well, or they might wonder, am I supposed to feel happy? She's not smiling. It's a mixed message if the face doesn't match the emotion of what you're saying. And finally, your voice, which could be singing. It could be just doing some vocal warm-ups. Tell everybody what your voice warm-up is, Marcey, that you do.
This is real. I'll say Helen Moses, Helen Moses, Helen Moses, Helen Moses, because it's hard. It's kind of hard to say really fast, and it kind of makes you hum a little bit. And I've done this for years. Helen used to have this thing at the beginning of COVID called Voiceletics. And so I do that before I record podcast episodes and before I go to stay on stage. And it's just saying Helen Moses over and over again.
So I offer that to anyone else who is looking for a quick and easy way to warm up your voice. But don't let the time you talk on that TEDx stage or any other presentation be the first time you talk that day.
Yes. Oh gosh, yes.
Yeah. Remember that you are there for the audience. Focus on serving them and being grateful for them so that you can connect with them. And then as much as possible, enjoy yourself. Try to be present to the smells, the people who are there, the sights, the sounds, just the whole experience of it all, because that will never come back.
Yeah. That, I've been speaking professionally for about 14 years now. And it made me think of something, you gave me 2 pieces of feedback that I speak all the time and I didn't realize I was doing. And what's helpful with the speaker coach is that you can let people know about their tics or their little things that they do that you don't think about. I had this tic, I guess. I would lean forward and I would do that because to me, it felt like I was engaging the audience because they were down below me. And when Helen pointed out that, well, it kind of looks almost like you're falling over, all the time. I didn't realize how often I do that. It was a habit where I'd lean forward. And I even went back and looked at other videos and I was like, oh yeah, I need to stop doing that. And then there was, there were a few times where my face expression didn't match what I was saying. And she'd say, you're smiling here, but really, this isn't where you'd be smiling. And so that was helpful too. And so, even if it's not a speaker coach, have somebody tell you about your tics that you have, or the things that you do that's unique to you.
And make sure it's somebody that's probably not your spouse.
No.
Or somebody really close to you, because this stuff is hard to take. It's hard to hear about those tics. But if you're going to be a good speaker, you want to know about them, because people will then focus on those instead of you and your message.
Yes. Yes. So you've done a TEDx talk.
Yep.
And I'm all about lessons earned because we earn our battle scars, and thinking about the smartest decisions we've made. So what was your lesson earned with your TEDx?
Well, it's just a reinforcement. It is not about me. It never was. It never will be in any public speaking experience that I have. It's always about the people I'm talking to and in my perspective that I am serving. I know this because, as I said, I lost my place and I ended up leaving out some of my carefully planned, scripted words that were so precious and they would have been so good and so right. And I just wanted people to know how much better it could have been, except in the end, the video, there's actually a little blip. If you want to watch it, you can see if you can find the spot where I lost my place and came back. I'm actually grateful for that little blip in the video now. Because it reminds me that after I finished and after I was mad with myself for messing up, people said, wow, you said my talk, it was called Do Talk to Strangers. And one woman said to me afterwards, well, I would never have spoken to you if it hadn't have been for your talk. So just immediate feedback from people that what I said to them made an impact, which was the whole point anyway.
Yeah.
It's never about us as the speaker. It's always about those we are serving with our words.
Yeah. That was my lesson earned, was because I also had an error that only speakers would probably even notice. And because I'm looking at it with a critical eye as a speaker, I focused in on that when really that, it was about the message to the audience, and that they didn't even notice that unless I pointed it out to them. So my lesson was actually don't point it out to people, because it didn't matter. It didn't matter.
Ultimately, it doesn't.
Yeah. Smartest decision.
Being coached. At TEDx Apex, which is where I spoke in 2022, we were offered the services which they put in their funding, their budget. Not every TEDx event does that, but the one I was a part of did, and offered us, there was some group coaching, and then that coach, shout out to Alan Hoffler.
I didn't realize it was Alan. Oh, Alan is a great.
He's amazing. So shout out to him because he's an amazing speaker coach. He went above and beyond what he even negotiated with the organizer. And that's what a good coach is going to do, because the coach is there to make sure that you're going to be the best you can so that the audience gets the best they can get out of what you have to say. And so I took advantage of that. But I'll tell you, when I worked with TEDx Raleigh, I was there at the disposal of all of the speakers, and not all of them took me up on that. And some of those talks, I felt like, whether it was me or anybody else, could have really been enhanced if they had taken the time to work with a coach or with fellow speakers. There were 3 other speakers on the same stage as me, and we got together over like 6 weeks before the event and met and went through each other's talks together and worked on them as they evolved. And that made a big difference as well. So it doesn't have to be a professional speaking coach, but if you can afford it, go for it. If you can't, find some other people, go to a Toastmasters Club meeting to get some feedback, because it's so valuable. Coaches need coaches, doctors need doctors. We all need a little bit of help.
Yes. And I did mention that in the first episode, that I went to a Toastmasters group. They happen to all be professional speakers. But going to that Toastmasters group, if you've ever had the pleasure of being a member of one, and if not, I highly recommend it to everyone, not just a speaker. Like, everybody can benefit from doing a year of Toastmasters. They give feedback in a certain way that can, that like your spouse or your best friend or your coworkers are not going to give feedback. It's a very structured type of feedback that I think is really useful.
Yeah.
As one of the things that you use for your rehearsals, for your one of many. So, all right. Well, Helen, thank you so much for helping me with my TEDx. And I'm actually feeling really emotional, and I want to cry right now, because it was one of the most vulnerable things I've ever done and said, and it was really hard for me to do it, and you helped me get through it. There were times that I would Voxer Helen, and I would say, I keep crying at this certain point, and I'm afraid I'm not going to be able to do it. And so you just, there just are no words. And if you saw me on the video, if this were a video, you'd see that I have a little tear in my eye right now, because I'm just so grateful to Helen. So thank you, Helen. I am going to put a link to Helen's website in the show notes. Also a link to Helen's just incredible book. It's such a wonderful book, Voice Unleashed, and also a link to my TEDx talk.
Yep, you should watch it. And I said should, but I meant it.
Thanks, Helen. Thank you for listening to the RaderCo Health Powered Productivity Podcast. The show notes link to any resources mentioned. If you found this podcast valuable, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone you know who could benefit. For more bite-sized tips, our top recommendations, and to learn more about working with myself and the RaderCo team, from consulting and coaching to speaking and more, visit helloraderco.com.